In this chapter, we're going to talk about sampling. What is it? What does it mean to music? Where did it come from? The history. Why is it even important? Why do we sample? For me, as a kid, I used to do a lot of art, and one of my favorite styles of art was like collage making, where you would take a magazine and you would find some images from one magazine. You would take a newspaper and it would be a different texture and medium, and you would cut some things up, maybe some words, a logo, and you would kind of put them all together and make your little collage. And that style of art was always very intriguing to me. And when I first heard sampling used in hip hop, it's hard to say what the first record was, but I think what it did was create this riff at first, I think, because it was, from a musical perspective, it's kind of tricky. It's sampling. It's like you're taking a piece of music that already exists, in the same way that you would take some clippings from a newspaper, or a magazine to make a collage. Of course, some musicians were a little bit against it at first, but I think what happened was one created a new style of music that was based on elements from the past, which also bridged the gap for an older generation of music that may have not been rediscovered. And I think there was like a silver lining to the cloud, where it seemed like, okay, this music can also, it's first of all, it's being used in a creative format where it's being recycled, but it's used in a way that is reimagined, I'd say, for a new generation. And I think for me, growing up, I discovered so much music from the samples of like all my favorite producers, or the samples that they used. And even before that, the first beats that I ever produced, like I remember your parents listened to some music. And for my parents, my father and my mother, they had like a certain little collection of records. There was a lot of different artists that I remember as a kid seeing, and when it was time for me to make beats, those were the records that I had access to. And that was like the limitation sometimes of sampling is also what is special about it. I didn't have access to a lot of records. Those were the records I had in the house that I heard growing up. So when it was time to make a beat, those were the records I reached for. And it's interesting because I always notice with a lot of artists I work with, the samples that they lean towards are usually, once I ask them questions about the records that they listened to growing up around their parents, it's a lot of the same style. So we don't even realize it, but as kids, the music around us is already influencing us, the melodies, the rhythms. And that was my first introduction to sampling personally, by taking records from my parents, and like kind of the first drum machine that we had. It wasn't even a drum machine. It was actually a mixer, and it had a little sampler on it, and you could sample like 3 seconds. It was a DJ mixer, and had a little feature where you could sample and loop about 3 seconds of a beat or any bed of music. And so those were also some of our first beats, where we would take a drum record and we'd play like a drum record on one side of the turntable, and then we would loop, something up in the mixer and just try to get it going and record it to a cassette. So those were like the early days of sampling and beat making. But I mean, when I heard Tribe Called Quest and the production that Q-Tip was doing, like it blew my mind, because at the time, I really didn't know all about samples as I do now. Like I wasn't as versed in where the drum came from and where the sample came from. And they were so magical. It was like the way the drums matched to the music. Later on, when I discovered the drum breaker, the loop, it blew my mind. Like, how did they glue it together so perfectly to where it was like a whole new experience? And for me, it was mind-blowing, And I would say Q-Tip, DJ Premier, of course, like everything, Gangstar, all those beats they had such an impact on me. And I think sampling, I discovered it to be an art form in itself, because like all my favorite producers, they had a sound. It was not only based on their technical ability, it was also based on the type of samples that they chose. So there was like a way to be expressive with your sample choices. The music is so vast. There is so much music out there in the world, so many different genres from different eras and types. So what you pick for as a producer consecutively could also develop your style.